Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly analyze the main tactical themes in Arsenal's 2-1 win over Wolves. So in today's video, first we're going to focus on Arsenal's pressing, then we'll break down their attacking shape against Wolves' 5-4-1, and lastly, we will analyze Arteta's adjustments in the second half. So when we break it all down and we do look at the board, we have Arsenal in their 4-1-4-1 that can look like a 4-3-3, with Martinelli sliding in for Smith Rowe in the starting lineup, and Wolves playing in their 3-4-2-1. So first we'll focus on Arsenal's pressing, and what we ended up seeing was that they pressed as expected with their front three closing down the Wolves center backs, and then you witness Tierney and Cedric pushing higher up the pitch to close down the Wolves wing backs. In that midfield zone, yes, Arsenal do have a 3v2, but if Hwang and Podence look to drop off deeper into that midfield zone, then they're overloaded. So what we ended up witnessing was that Odegaard would take turns shifting between Moutinho and Ruben Neves, depending on the side that Wolves were looking to play out of. In those situations, that's when you would get help from one of the wider players in Saka or Martinelli, who would shift laterally to drop onto the spare man. And there were even times where we witnessed Lacazette dropping off to the spare midfielder just to ensure that Saka and Martinelli can stick towards those wide center backs. The reason why we didn't witness Xhaka and Thomas Partey consistently drop off into those zones was due to the movement of Podence and Hwang. If Podence dropped off deeper, Xhaka would be tasked with stepping towards him. Unless he was in a higher position and White was focused on Jimenez, then Gabriel can shift over and step with Podence, and that's where you can have Xhaka stepping towards a spare man in that midfield zone. And while Hwang didn't offer much of a threat in between the lines, the same thing applied on the opposite side. With Cedric stepping towards the wing back, Hwang would be closed down by White, but if White was closed down by Jimenez, that's where you would see Thomas Partey shifting across to close down Hwang. Basically, you had Thomas Partey and Xhaka sitting in those deeper zones, monitoring the movement of Hwang and Podence in that central area. And frankly, the only time that Arsenal did encounter issues with their pressing was when you had Xhaka and Martinelli not stepping tight towards Kilman and Xhaka not tracking the movement of Podence. And that's when you would drop off Gabriel into that huge gap of space if Xhaka was caught in Wolves' third. And that's where you ended up seeing the center backs sliding the ball across their markers into the path of Podence. And from there, he was able to carry the ball forward to progress Wolves' play. Here you witness Kilman receiving the ball, and Martinelli and Xhaka aren't applying tight pressure to Ruben Neves or the center back. That allows him to dump the ball across both Arsenal players into the path of Podence, who drops off Gabriel, and you can see that now Xhaka and Thomas Partey have to shift laterally to close down the Wolves attacking midfielder. Tierney can't step due to Semedo, and that results in Podence carrying the ball, and he locates Jimenez looking to make a run in between the two center backs, and neither Thomas Partey or Xhaka can step across in time, and White is focused on Hwang. Podence ends up splitting both Arsenal center backs by bypassing Gabriel, and it places Raul Jimenez in this position where he has to have a good first touch, and the second touch has to be a shot. The first touch ends up popping up in towards the path of the penalty area, and with White shifting across because he doesn't control the ball smoothly, White's pressure forces Jimenez to drag the shot wide of the net. Therefore, when we focus on Arsenal, they encountered contrasting issues with Wolves' shape. Wolves dropped off into a 5-4-1 and weren't eager to press on a consistent basis, and they ensured that White and Gabriel could carry the ball forward and were looking to deny them passing options in that midfield zone. You had Jimenez sitting on top of Thomas Partey. Xhaka was pushing higher up the pitch into the gap between Ruben Neves and Podence. And then what was really intriguing about Wolves' shape was that they were wary of the threat of Odegaard. What we've witnessed throughout this season is that when Arsenal have encountered issues bypassing the opposing side's press, Odegaard would drop into that inside left position in towards the channels or shift towards the touchline to get on the ball. But here Wolves were wary of that threat, and what they ended up doing was that they had Hwang and Moutinho compressing space and blocking off the passing lane in towards Odegaard. And when Odegaard looked to shift towards the touchline, Hwang was blocking off the passing lane in towards him. And even when Odegaard looked to be a bit crafty, he would attempt to shift laterally across Hwang and Moutinho to receive the ball on the outside of them in those central areas. But then that's where you would see Romain Saiss stepping forward to apply tight pressure. And even in situations where Odegaard shifted towards the touchline, you could also witness the wingback pushing forward to apply pressure to close him down tightly. Out in those wider zones, Hwang and Podence were closing down Cedric and Tierney tightly, and then Saka and Martinelli were closed down by the wingbacks. Even with Lacazette looking to drop off deeper to create that diamond shape in that midfield zone, Connor Cody was stepping tight towards him to apply pressure, and he made life difficult for Lacazette in those areas. The only real issue that you could have with Arsenal's setup was the movement of Thomas Partey, who was often situated in that central zone and easy to mark out, and at times you just wish that he dropped off in towards the back line or out into the half spaces to get on the ball to drag Wolves players out of position. However, luckily for Arsenal, Thomas Partey's ability to be press resistant and evade challenges helped him impact the game in the middle and final third. Therefore, throughout that opening half, the only way that Arsenal were able to bypass that 5-4-1 was if Jimenez wasn't on Thomas Partey and he was able to pull out markers and evade challenges, specifically from Moutinho or Ruben Neves. If the center backs were able to split those midfield gaps to find Saka, Odegaard, or Xhaka dropping in between the lines, or they resulted to long balls over the top for Saka and Martinelli looking to run in behind the opposing side's wingbacks, but when they attempted to go a bit more direct, Wolves were able to cope with that threat. In terms of the opening stages of the second half, neither manager provided any significant tactical shifts. Martinelli was drifting laterally and getting himself into more central areas near the box, and Tierney enjoyed some of Arsenal's better moments. And apart from Wolves breaking in transition, what we ended up witnessing was that if Arsenal didn't have their center backs breaking lines to get their attacking players or fullbacks into positions in the final third to create, or if they weren't playing long balls over the top to the runs of Martinelli and Saka in behind, they really struggled to impact the game because neither Saka or Martinelli were able to beat their defenders to get themselves into legitimate goal-scoring positions. And whenever Arsenal did get into those areas, they struggled to test the goalkeeper. Arteta does deserve some credit here for making tactical shifts to impact the game. First, he brought on Nicolas Pepe for Martinelli, and that shifted Saka to the left-hand side and Pepe to the right. And where Saka struggled to have an impact in the final third, Pepe was involved in both goals. But then he ended up bringing on Nketiah for Cedric, shifting into more of a 3-1-4-2 that had Saka and Pepe pushing high as wingbacks, and Nketiah dropping off in towards pockets of space to receive the ball, but also offering an additional presence in that penalty area to occupy defenders. Nevertheless, Arsenal's best chances from open play stemmed through Odegaard receiving the ball in and around the final third, and he had to be patient, but whenever he did receive the ball in those zones, he offered guile and penetrative passes around the Wolves penalty area to make the difference on the night. Here you witness Xhaka ahead of Ruben Neves, and you can see that Martinelli and Lacazette are occupied by center backs, but focus on Odegaard in a few yards of space ahead of Moutinho. When Odegaard receives the ball, you could see that Semedo is looking to shift laterally to track the movement of Martinelli, but Martinelli and Lacazette are still occupied. However, because Moutinho doesn't get tight, it gives Odegaard a few yards to check his options, and he locates that Martinelli is now looking to make a run off Kilman because Kilman gets tight towards Lacazette. Odegaard scoops the ball over the Wolves center backs and it falls into the path of Martinelli, but it's just a few yards over hit and it forces the keeper off his line, but Martinelli can't scoop the ball over him and that halts the attack. When you break down the Arsenal equalizer, it's Odegaard receiving the ball from White with Podence making a recovery track back, but what you end up seeing is that Odegaard has the space to cut across Podence and Moutinho, and you can see that Pepe is calling for the ball in between Saiz and the left wing back, but that creates space for Nketiah to make the run off Cody into right half space, and that's what was beneficial of having another striker in this system. You have Pepe pegging back the wing back, and then you have the run of Nketiah into right half space. When Odegaard clips the ball over the top, Nketiah is aware that you have Pepe making the run off the left wing back and Saiz, and because Cody isn't tight, he just looks to play a first time ball across the center back into the path of Pepe, who turns superbly with his first touch, and he ends up beating the keeper. And then Arsenal's winner comes from that same side. Focus on Pepe holding off the left wing back and squaring the ball in towards Odegaard, and once again there's no tight pressure from Moutinho, and with the left back looking to track laterally, Odegaard has time to get his head up to assess his options. Pepe continues his run across Odegaard, and from there what Odegaard does well is that he ends up splitting Moutinho and the left wing back because no pressure is applied, and he plays the ball into the path of Lacazette backing into Saiz. Lacazette flicks the ball into the path of Pepe, who continued his run unmarked, And then he plays a first-time ball across Saiz and Ruben Neves to play in Lacazette, and his attempted pullback across the box is deflected into the net. So as you can see, while Wolves' 5-4-1 presented issues to Arsenal's build-up play throughout this game, Arteta's tactical adjustment combined with Odegaard's impact in the final third proved crucial in a must-win game for the Gunners.